So did Amazon fix it? Because I know they screwed up Comixology when they bought it. But like, is it
Never had
better
any
now?
issues.
I mean, I heard they screwed it up recently, but I haven't heard any improvements since. So
At least that's what I
honestly haven't
heard.
used it since. So yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I read this with no problems. So obviously this is a Batman universe book, but this is not a Batman book. This is book one in the Line of Duty. Had either of you guys read this before? This was a first read for me.
This was first read for me.
This was a first read for me too. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm probably gonna miss stuff. I'm gonna kind of be scrolling through to see if I bring up stuff that maybe I forgot. I found the back half to be better than the first half, and so the back half is mostly what's sticking with me. But I would
Fair
say
enough.
this whole book is a complete story. Like you could just read this volume and just not read anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's not really a big cliffhanger. I mean, there's stuff that I know about in this run that hasn't even been introduced yet.
Great art, by the way. I love this art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
this is I don't remember the name of the artist, but this is written by Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka, who also worked on Batman Cape Crusader recently, and there's a lot of weird similarities I found between that show and this, which we can get into later.
I think it's Brubaker, or maybe it's Rucka, I can't remember which, that just like loves Montoya. So she's gonna be in like anything written by him. So it says here art is by Michael Lark. And you can tell this is an old trade because it just says Batman created by Bob Kane.
Yep.
Yeah,
they haven't updated it.
There is a newer version of the Omnibus, though, that maybe it says it in that.
Robert, do you have the Omnibus or just the trade?
No, this is the trade. This has got the new 52 DC logo on it.
Oh.
That's how you know how old it is.
Peely thing.
Yeah, everyone hates it, but I guess it was so short-lived that I never really minded it since we got away from it so quickly.
Robert, we have different versions. Mine does not have the new 52.
Oh, yeah, that would be the original. That would have been the DC logo when this was first printed, when this first came out.
Yeah,
that's the mid-2000s logo.
Mine is better.
So
you could
yours. You could collect a version of this book with all three logos. The current one and the two previous ones.
So Noah, what was your experience with this book? What stood out to you? Like, what are your overall thoughts?
Yeah, so like we said before, this was a first read for all of us. It was a first read for me. I had always heard great things about this book, but I never read it myself. I was always kind of putting off reading it. But yeah, it's a cop procedural comic.
My favorite show, folks.
It was a slip because I kind of want this to be a show, and we can get into it. But this is exactly what Gotham should have been, right?
Yeah, I mean this is scripted and laid out like a procedural. Yeah.
And I would watch it over most procedurals just because it's a lot more character driven than something like, Law and Order, what I've seen of that.
Well, and I have that with the Penguin, is I'm not a big crime guy, but like I loved that first episode of the Penguin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and especially after that show and Cape Crusader, I really want a show like this, maybe in the Reeves verse or something like that.
Make it happen, James Gunn.
It was announced and then it went nowhere. But anyway, Gotham Central. I really loved my experience reading this book. I kind of adored this. This was maybe one of my favorite things we've reviewed so far.
Gush about it, why don't you?
I think I am going to gush about it in this review. Can we review the next volume next week? I just want to keep reading it. No, it's really good. It's a book. It's a lot more episodic than I was expecting. There's threads that are continued through each arc, but this first volume has 3 mini arcs. The first one's like 2 issues, the second one's 3 issues, and then the third one is 5 or something, 4 or 5, something like that. and they each kind of focus on different detectives within the GCPD. Going in, I knew that this was like a critically acclaimed book, but I didn't know a whole lot about it. I was expecting to see more of Gordon and Bullock and that whole kind of, group of the GCPD. The only member of that really has any prominence is Renee Montoya, who the last arc is mainly focused on her, and it's probably the best one. The one where she gets outed as lesbian.
Which is that where this all was? That where that starts? Is this book?
I feel like it might be, because I don't know if this is the first thing where she's established as being queer, but I knew that the one other thing I knew about this was this had like a story arc where she gets outed. So when it got to that point, I was like, oh, okay, this is it. But I didn't know that was also connected to another thing that's revealed later.
Yeah, because I mean, just as long as I've known the character, I've known her as a lesbian character. So it's interesting to see, like, she's still in the closet here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's at an interesting point in time because it's way after she was established in like the animated series, but this is like the first time we've seen this aspect of this like core aspect of her character be established, and then later on she becomes the Question, which I think is also written by either Brubaker or Rucka.
I want to read that now.
I really want to read that now. Yeah. I'm kind of rambling all over the place, but I did really enjoy this overall. I had a pretty positive experience with it.
Yeah, I was like, Noah, your thoughts, and then he just wrote like a 5-paragraph essay.
This is like everything I was thinking about after reading it, just kind of barfed out.
So I have questions with some of the status quo stuff, just because I don't know what the status quo was surrounding this book, but we'll get to that. Robert, what was your first impressions? How was your experience with this book? You said you read it in one sitting. Is that normal for you, or is it just because this book was just that good?
Because this book was that good. There's a point in the middle where I was like, I could put this down and do something else, but nah, I'll keep going. That's how you know you're really invested in something. I think this just gets better and better. I like the first arc. I think the second arc's better, and then the third arc's the best. We can get into that if any of us disagree, but when it starts, in so many ways it's made for me because I grew up on a lot of procedural type shows, but I wasn't really a Law and Order guy. I'm more of a CSI guy because that gets a bit more wacky and has more shows like that. Show had more dynamic characters, in my opinion, and this is one of those things that takes me right back to that with the fun mysteries and the crazy villains and that contrast. When it starts, I don't know if any of you guys had this. It's almost a little overwhelming because there's a lot of characters they throw at you, and I'm like, I'm not remembering anyone's names. I'm having trouble telling some characters apart. But you ease into it as it goes. Where it's like, okay, these are main players, and it effortlessly shifts like POV, where we have one guy who's kind of our main protagonist for the first two arcs, but then we shift to Montoya being our protagonist for the third arc, and it's done very seamless. Like you don't even notice it. Well, it's happening like, oh yeah, that character just kind of took a backseat, but it's fine. It feels very fleshed out and detailed, and I just love the whole vibe of this. And the era this is set in is interesting because I hadn't known or I'd forgotten that Gordon was retired at this point, so we had a new commissioner. And what I actually don't know is if Gordon ever comes out of retirement or in main continuity, or if this is just how it is to the end, because New 52 is what, like 6 or 7 years after this when we full on reboot. So I actually don't know. That's a real blind spot for me. I haven't read a lot of the Morrison Batman run like that, or the Paul Dini run. Like that 2000s era of Batman is one I'm very unfamiliar with before we reboot and go to the New 52. So I don't know if Gordon ever comes out of retirement or if this is just the status quo to the end of this continuity. But yeah, it's a really interesting place to drop you off in.
So that is one of the things I had a question about, but keep in mind, this book starts in 2002, so this is a long time before New 52.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that this book was that old, but yeah, because they reference No Man's Land a few times.
Yes. Yeah, because somebody, and maybe it was Austin, had told me that he thought this might have been out of continuity, but it can't be because they mention like No
Yeah.
Man's Land and
Yeah, so the commissioner thing was one of the things that threw me off in that first arc when I was reading it, because it was like I had to read that section again a few times before I realized, oh wait, this is the commissioner he's speaking to, and it's not Gordon. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that there was a time in the comics where he was retired or anything.
Well,
So that must be like a post No Man's Land thing I'm thinking of.
and one of the areas where they just kind of throw you into this is apparently it is confirmed that Bullock was a dirty cop and was kicked off, but that's all talked about so far in this volume. We never see Bullock. We don't get a ton of context, so like that's something that presumably happened in the comics before this, but no, that's
Yeah.
just the status quo you're thrown into. It'll be interesting if he ever actually pops up. I don't know if there's a conspiracy with that. I don't know if he was framed, but it'll be interesting if he ever pops up in this run, down the road.
I'd like to keep reading to find out, because the impression I got was he might have been framed, or at least Montoya and a few others think so. But there's precedent for making Bullock an actual dirty cop even now with like Cape Crusader, stuff like that.
And I've just never been a fan of that. Like, he should be a pain in the ass, but at the end of the day, he's a good cop in my opinion. But I don't know. I don't know what the like circumstances are around this. But it makes me wonder if that's why he's a dirty cop in Cape Crusader.
Yeah, maybe. And like I said, that's where this might be in main continuity, because that could be a thing that just happened in the comics before this that I just don't know about.
Yeah, those are the two biggest status quo things. It's like, okay, where's Gordon? Because they introduce a commissioner, and I don't know who it is. And then we just get mentions of Bullock. So the main thing I took away from this is, I don't know if you guys thought about this, but Nolan was kind of looking at this too.
Possibly.
Because this is the only place I've ever seen the MCU, not that MCU, the other MCU. Marvel, the Major Crimes Unit, which is in the Dark Knight.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably in a few other Batman stories too.
Yeah, well, and I don't know the full story on this, because there's the character of Martinez in Dark Knight, and the story I've heard is that she's clearly kind of a stand-in for Montoya, but they didn't want to literally be Montoya because she ends up being dirty. So they were like, okay, maybe let's change her name. That's the story I've heard. I don't know.
That's always what I assumed. Yeah.
But it does have that,
But it's interesting in this with the MCU. It seems like a unit put together by Gordon to deal with these super criminals, but none of them actually can deal with super criminals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only group of honest cops in the whole department too, because you see them interact with the other departments where there's like the robbery unit or something like that that's really lazy and always pawning off cases onto them.
Which so that is consistent.
Like the last remnants of good cops that Gordon picked out before he retired.
Yeah, which I do appreciate that, because it is consistent with, like, yes, Batman and Gordon brought change, but it wasn't station-wide. It was, well, now we have a unit of good cops to battle the units of corrupt cops.
It's for as much good as Gordon and Batman do, it's never quite enough. Like, there's always going to be that internal struggle between good and evil, even within the systems in Gotham.
Yeah. But yeah, so this first story is a Mr. Freeze story. Yes. I didn't have a lot of issues, but I did have one question with the way they write Freeze's dialogue. And sometimes, because whenever I read Mr. Freeze, so like, I don't necessarily need a voice to go along with the dialogue I'm reading, because I'm just reading a book. But oftentimes, if it's something that I've seen a lot of, like in an animated show or a movie, I will read it in that voice. So I read Mr. Freeze in animated series voice. And he has a panel on page 12 of mine where he says, "What the hell you say? That doesn't read like Mr. Freeze dialogue to me."
No.
I had that too.
And he doesn't talk like that.
Second time.
He doesn't talk like that for the rest of the book.
No.
It's especially jarring when the suit he's in is clearly, riffing on the Mignola design suit from the animated series. Like Mr. Freeze is almost always drawn in comics to kind of reflect that version. Like that quickly becomes the definitive take on Mr. Freeze, which is why it can be kind of jarring.
This is also one of the more brutal and cold, pun intended, Mr. Freezes I've ever seen. Like,
yeah, he's kind of
legitimately scary.
In this.
Well, not only is that, he's also, because Mr. Freeze and any other supernatural or like more comic booky heightened villain would be more scary if you're a regular person going up against him.
Yeah.
And there's that scene where one of the main characters, Marcus, his partner, gets frozen right at the beginning of the book, and he like starts ripping him in half and like taking pieces of his body off, and it's really frightening. And I don't know if this struck you guys, but it read to me as a little bit more sadistic than I typically see Freeze, and it was a little strange to see that.
Yeah, because I've always seen Freeze as he's not out to hurt people. He just wants to help his wife. But this Freeze is like making deals behind doors with this guy, and I think that ends up tying into the third arc. I can't remember now. It's been a couple days. Yeah, and like he enjoys hurting people, and even the GCBD talks about like he's always like just crushing people's hopes and like messing with them.
Mm-hmm.
I've never read a Mr. Freeze story where he's out to actually hurt someone that hasn't wronged him.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's very similar to the take on him in the new Batman Adventures episode, the one I don't like, where Freeze is just trying to hurt and punish Gotham because he wants everyone to feel what he feels. So I've seen that in the comics too. It's not inauthentic. What can be jarring is, because for anyone who doesn't know, the whole tragic backstory with his wife and everything, that's invented for animated series. That's not from the comics. He's just a one-note villain before that. But I believe that was integrated into the comics by this point. Like, I think they had worked that in by the late 90s, but there's no mention of that here, so I don't know. That can be jarring if that's the Freeze, the more sympathetic version, because you don't get that at all here. And the other thing that's jarring, I don't know if you guys had this at all, I think it's the cop who dies, or the detective who dies. His wife's name is Nora.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit on the nose.
Yeah, because for a second I was like... Because for a second I was like, oh, did she get better in the comics? Is she out of her coma? And then it's like a completely different character named Nora in this Mr. Freeze story.
And she never shows up again because she works there, and it's like, she needs some time off because of the trauma. And then she's just never mentioned again.
No, that happened. Really, I was like, that has to be intentional.
I don't know.
There's a lot of Noras in DC.
It's just a weird little detail. I think she is mentioned again somewhere in the second arc, but just like a throwaway comment. But that scene where she has to look at her husband's body is really well done. That was a good scene.
This isn't the animated or movie world where somebody can be frozen. It's like, fine, just thaw them off in 20 minutes. Like, no, when you're frozen, you are dead in this comic.
So the only issue I have with that is I appreciate it as an alternate perspective of like what happens in Gotham during the day. But I'm pretty sure I haven't read a whole lot of Mr. Freeze. My main Mr. Freeze is adaptation. But I feel like in a Batman story we would have thought him out at some point. Like we would have that technology. So is Batman just not like shared this with the police? Do they not have a way to get a hold of Batman and say, hey, can you like fix this guy's arm?
Well, he did rip up his body before.
Well, that's true.
No, not him, because he freezes the other guy's arm.
Oh yeah, the guy who are you talking about the guy they find in the van?
Marcus, yeah.
No, he's just talking about the guy whose hands were frozen.
Which is Marcus. Charlie is the one that's killed.
Okay.
And now remember that they hadn't turned on the signal yet. They hadn't contacted Batman yet. So at that point in the story, I don't think
Yeah.
Batman knows what's going
Well,
on.
I'm also confused about their relationship with Batman because they kind of talk at points like they're not supposed to contact him, and I don't know if that's just like the new commissioner or it's like something else going on. Like, is he still allied with the GCPD? Are they enemies now? I don't have a lot of the picture of the status quo. So if you're just coming into this book, I feel like there's a lot of information you're missing if you're not reading the other titles going on around this time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think the idea is just supposed to be he's a vigilante, and like the higher ups and like the American government are probably going to look down on this police department working really closely with a vigilante.
But that doesn't make sense in a Batman book.
Maybe not, but I thought it was fine. I like the detail of them not being allowed to officially touch the bat signal. And like the interns have to switch it on. I thought that was a good detail.
I mean, it's fun, but that's another thing where I'm asking, but why?
It made sense to me in context.
It's a fun moment. It's just hard to buy in, when we've had this many years of Batman history behind it. If this is year one era, like that's not.
Yeah, well, I think it's worse because they bring up like No Man's Land. Sorry, no, real quick.
Okay.
They bring up like No Man's Land, which means Nightfall had to have happened, which means a bunch of classic Batman stories have happened. So the minute Gordon retires, now they're not allowed to work with Batman. I needed more information about like what the status quo is.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think I can see this process being put in place with Gordon as commissioner anyway, because I think the idea is they're working with Batman, but they have to keep it on the down low. And only for this story is Marcus is the one that pushes to not call Batman in the first arc because they have that whole thing of we need to be motivated to actually solve our own cases and not let the Batman do all the work for us.
And I buy why he's saying that because it's personal. I don't buy for a second that other cops would go along with that.
Well, to be fair, that doesn't last that long because once they know where Freeze is targeting, that's when they say, that's when Marcus turns around and says, "Now we gotta call Batman. I don't want to, but we need to."
Right.
So like that all played fine for me.
Yeah, because you have that scene where they're talking about how they put Batman's face up on the board to say that like, oh, he like case is solved by Batman, and that was like a motivator because it was demoralizing to the other cops. Yeah, that's another detail I really liked and appreciated.
I liked that detail, and that works when you're dealing with like regular criminals. It's like, oh, who can we catch more of? But I would assume they've run into Mr. Freeze before. They would know they're not equipped to handle something like that.
Yeah, I guess, but...
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, they stumble upon Freeze at the start. It's a complete accident. They're not looking for Freeze.
No, I'm not talking about the beginning. The beginning is fine. What I'm saying is I understand why Marcus doesn't want to call Batman because it's personal. I don't understand why none of the other cops go, wait a minute, this is Mr. Freeze. We do not have the equipment to deal with this guy. Maybe we should call somebody who does.
Well, I guess that's fair, and they do get to that point by the end of the story that they do realize, oh wait, we kind of do need Batman in some certain situations, but I don't know, it worked for me because it felt. Imagine being a cop in this world, and most of your cases are solved by this random bat guy. Like,
it doesn't bother me because at the end of the day, it was a good story. And I like that Marcus is the one that comes around. But I needed at least somebody to go, hey, wait a minute. We've come up against this guy before, and every time we do, one of us gets hurt or killed. Maybe we should call for the expert.
Not mentioned. Yeah, it's not mentioned before that point, but I think the story still addresses it.
I like dealing with Charlie, with Marcus's like PTSD. You know, he got his partner's been killed. He blames himself for it, and in a way, he blames Batman. We got this cool like shot of what Freeze does to people.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
What a way to go.
horrifying. That is
And
terrifying.
to be fair, too, for a lot of the story, they're not looking for Freeze. They're just trying to figure out what he's targeting. They're trying to figure out what his motivation is. Because they're doing the normal police work. They're looking at known associates and contacts, locations. Like they're doing like normal police work just to figure out what his motivation is. Like they're not going after him directly yet. So that stuff all played fine.
Yeah.
So this is again me not knowing anything about comic book Freeze, but I thought this was a fun reference. His suit needs diamonds to function.
Oh my god, I'm glad you brought that up. That made me laugh so hard. Because I think that comes from the movie. Maybe that is
That's the only thing I can think of. Did you have that?
Robin.
Outside of this and Batman and Robin, I have never seen his suit needing diamonds to power it.
No, it's such a specific reference. I loved it.
And spoiler alert, diamonds aren't ice. Makes no sense.
But then in that same panel, she says he likes people to suffer. Since when?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because all throughout the book they're talking about, oh, this isn't typically Freeze's MO. Like he would kill someone if he needed to, and I'm like, eh.
But Robert, I'm gonna argue with you on that point of they're just doing detective work. They just want to know what he's after. They are very clearly trying to get this done before sundown to beat Batman, because Montoya has a line, and it's got to be soon because Freeze knows as well as we do. Once the sun goes down, he's gonna have a bat up his ass. So they're racing against Batman, and I need a line of like why they're so afraid to work with Batman after all this time, because you would assume they've been working with him for years. And then we just got like detective work, and the detective work is good work. Just hitting the street, talking to people, chasing down leads.
And like I said, they throw a lot of characters at you, and you're not sure yet, like who our main players are gonna be, and who's just kind of here for this story, or who's mainly just background. And again, with Freeze's motivation, it's like that does track with the pre-animated series stuff, because he was just a bad guy before that. But it's the one thing that feels like more of this comic specific take than what Freeze is. Again, I haven't read anything, everything. I'm not an expert, but I think the whole
Robert, why don't you know these things?
Because I can't know everything. Like, I think that had been worked into the comics by that point. So again, that can be a little jarring if that's the Freeze you're familiar with.
So let me ask you guys this on this first arc before I move on. Do you think it is too easy how Marcus puts it all together?
That played fine for me. Again, it's doing that classic Batman thing where like every villain kind of has a riddle or at least a clue. It's like, wait, they said this, but they actually meant this, or they told me the whole time, and like that's kind of funny.
That did strike me as a little too easy, but I was fine with it.
But I like to, I think Batman's used really well in this book, where he shows up when we need him. But also a lot of the classic Batman stuff is done off screen because that's not who we're following. But this story doesn't end with Marcus beating up Mr. Freeze in a fist fight, because that would be ridiculous. It's like, no, Batman still defeats Mr. Freeze. We just don't see it because that's not what the story's about. That's not what's important. We just know, okay, Batman defeated Freeze, and that's what matters. I think they strike that balance of the police are integral in figuring out Freeze's plan and where he is and needing Batman's help, but they still need Batman to defeat him because a normal cop can't take down Mr. Freeze. This is not an anti-Batman story in the context of Gotham in this world. No, we still need Batman. And I think it strikes that balance really well.
Sorry, hang on just a second.
No problem.
Any thoughts, Torga?
No, I mean, I pretty much echo most of what you said. Out of the three, this honestly might be my least favorite, but I was still really enjoying it when I was reading it. Like you said before, Robert, they do throw a lot of characters at you, and I got mixed feelings on the art. I do like it for the most part, but the problem is you get a lot of detectives kind of have similar looking character designs. So at first, in that first arc, it was a little hard to like keep track of who's who. I much prefer in the next two when they split up into those two different units or different teams. And I think from this point on, each arc is written either by Brubaker or Rucka. Like they don't collaborate on everything.
I think it's Brubaker. I think it's Brubaker.
They do collaborate a lot though, because I was reading one of the reasons this book ends is Rucka left. I think it's Rucka left.
Okay.
And at a certain point, Brubaker's like, yeah, but they've left, and like it was very much collaboration. So like even if they're only one of them is writing it, it sounds like maybe they were working together behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, and I was actually wrong. So Brubaker and Rucka do the first story, then it's just Brubaker on the second story, and then it's Rucka on the third.
They switch off, I think, from that point on.
This is a great panel of Gotham.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I think the art is pretty great for the most part. It's just that was the one problem I ran into with some of the character designs, but I really love the like that big panel of Gotham that John just showed. Just like some of the just like the setting of Gotham. I like how it's presented in the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think the artwork sometimes, I'm not a big fan of, you'll get panels like this where it's just like two characters standing. I'm not a big fan of the like almost blank faces that people can have.
Well,
I think that works for Batman. not
to be
so
fair,
much Montoya.
Maybe it just plays different when you're reading it digitally. That is a small panel, like because in the context of the full page, it looks like that.
Yeah, I blew it up so people could see it.
Okay, yeah.
Jeez, Robert, get with the times.
How dare you read digitally?
Yeah,
you heathen.
And then we have a second arc. And this is why I don't think it's as episodic as you were saying, because they don't typically in an episodic thing. It's like we just start like with a new plot. This is carrying over from the second arc is carrying over from the first arc, where we're picking up on the cop that was killed in the first arc's one of his missing cases.
Yeah, because the case that him and his partner were investigating at the very beginning was of the missing little girl, but they got like bad info on that and they ran into Mr. Freeze, so that's how that whole arc started. But in this, he's continuing that previous investigation, and he gets partnered with someone else's partner. There's like a bit of a love triangle thing going on there that I have mixed feelings about.
And this is another Cape Crusader connection. It's not Firefly, but Firebug.
Firebug,
yes. Everybody's favorite.
Yeah, Brubaker must really like Firebug. And both Cape
at least Firebug has
the same joke.
One fan. And it's Brubaker.
And whoever put him in that 89 video game.
Yes. And then you also have as a kind of B plot, the missing girl.
Well, I'd call the missing girl the A plot.
That's the A plot.
Firebug being
Wait,
the A plot.
No, I'm getting it mixed up. Because there's two plots that are running concurrently in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait, the missing girl is the body that they're investigating. That's the case, right?
Yeah.
What is the B plot? I'm blanking.
The Firebug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's just that Firebug is like broken out, or like he's setting fires, and then they converge at the end, which I thought was really cool. Did you guys see that coming? Because I did not.
I did see it coming, but I was along for the ride. I enjoyed this arc more than the previous one, just because it was more focused on two characters rather than like all of those billion characters at the beginning. I like Marcus and Romy, I think her name is. I think they have really good chemistry, and I was invested in the mystery too, even though it was a little bit predictable. As soon as that father who the girl was babysitting for was introduced, I had a feeling it could have been him. But
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, all right, let's see where it goes though.
I've seen enough of these things to call that immediately. I was like, he did it.
Yeah,
He matches
exactly.
the description of whoever killed her. It was him. But what I did not see coming was how it was going to converge with the Firebug subplot, and I should have, because that is like police procedural 101. Is you have an A plot and a B plot that seem completely unrelated, and then surprise, these things are all connected.
So I mean, I kind of suspected it might be him. What I more so meant is I did not see them like being the same, like tying together. Even though you're right, Robert, I've seen enough like police procedurals to know that somehow they will connect. You get a really cool like panel of Batman saving somebody from a burning building. How do you guys feel about this Batman design?
I like it.
I think it's fine. It's going for a very year one look. It's not my favorite, but I mean, you don't see him a lot in this comic. But it's not a big deal. It's one of those things that makes you curious, like how much comics are looking at each other, like how he looked in Batman or Detective Comics at this time. If there's any consistency in the other books. Not that it matters.
Is this what they're doing? Is this what Brubaker's doing his run on Batman? Like war games and stuff like that?
I don't know. I don't know the time.
Robert, why don't you know things?
I know some things. But I was invested in this mystery with this dead girl. That stuff all played really great for me.
No, War Games is a couple years later. So.
Okay.
I'm not looking forward to reading that. But it's really bad.
I've not read that at all. I haven't heard much about it. But yeah, this was a good story. I liked how they put together, or the slip up that the guy has when they're interrogating him near the end, where they say Firefly, and then he goes, actually, isn't it Firebug? And then that's the giveaway that he knows, more than he's letting on.
Well, and I love the way they set that up too to trap him, because they have the real Firebug in custody who says he sold a suit on G-Bay or something.
G-Bay. That is so silly.
And when he says, "Oh, some rich guy," and then that's when they're able to connect the things and go, "Oh, wait a minute," because the other guy it was rich who they were suspecting. So they bring him in, pretending to kind of question about something else, and when they bring him in like through the office, the real Firebug is there, and it's like, how'd you find him? Like, yeah, that's the guy. So they already know. It's a great bit of entrapment.
Yeah, it's just really solid.
They write that cop stuff really
well,
No,
go ahead. Sorry, you were finishing up that.
No, it's just funny how with like cop cliches or tactics, depending on the medium or the POV, it can either be really entertaining or really piss you off. Because it was make me think back to Haunting of Hill House, when you get that episode when the dad is being interrogated and they've held him in there for like an hour. And they're like, "Oh, did you want cream or not? Oh, sorry, I'll get it." And I'm like yelling at the TV. I'm like, "Oh my God, just talk to him. Enough with the cop, good cop, bad cop bull crap, and just talk to the side." Because we, the audience, know that the dad is innocent and we're in his shoes. So it's infuriating. But when you're looking at a bad guy, like, it's fun.
Okay. Real quick before we continue, I do have to step away for a second, so I'm just going to pause the recording. I will be right back.
Okay. Sure. The mom and the dad seem to have two different reactions, where the mom is very like angry or like, accusatory and or, like, saying she's going to hell and stuff like that, whereas the dad is just silent. So I don't know what hits harder.
Yeah, and obviously it's a misguided
love. Real quick, I have potentially bad news. My tablet fell on my keyboard, and I think it paused the recording again, and I don't know what it didn't record.
Oh no.
It says we've got about 40 minutes of footage, so that could have been back at Arc 2, it could have been at Arc 3, I don't know.
Oh no.
So due to a recording error, we're going to sum up Arc 3. We'll talk about it a little bit more.
Okay.
I blame Robert.
Sure.
Arc 3, it's kind of overrated. I didn't really like it that much.
No. This is my favorite arc. The stuff that spoke to me most was Maggie. How did you feel about this Two-Face being so like head over heels for her, even though he knows that she's gay? Did that work for you? Or not Maggie, Renee. Sorry,
Montoya.
Renee. Yeah. I think we briefly talked about how it's informed by stuff that happened earlier in like maybe No Man's Land or something else. I think if I had known that or I had experienced that, it would have worked a little bit better for me because there's that part where she's like, well, why are you coming after me like this? You know I like girls. You've seen that picture of me. And he's like, why would that change anything about our relationship or something like that?
Mhm.
So clearly there's something that she did that like really resonated with him and he takes it really personally, but it's just as just having this, it didn't like fully work for me, but I don't know. I think I could kind of see what they were doing.
I didn't mind it. You could read it a couple different ways. One way you could look at it is like, well, I don't care about being with you physically. I just think we belong together. Like he might be looking for a more platonic love. It could be deeper than just lustful. Or he could also have the mindset of like, well, no, you chose to do that, and you can choose to be with me. Like that could be his rationalization of it, especially in the time when this was written. His solution is, oh well, is that girl a problem? Okay, well then I'll kill it. That's the obvious solution. I'll kill her, and then you don't need to worry about her. Now you can be with me. It's a very Phantom of the Opera, take on Two-Face. And I didn't mind it. I thought it was a really good story.
Yeah, no, because there's also the detail of he sees them as kindred spirits, and going back to the title of the arc, she's living half a life just like he is. So there's that. That part did work for me. I just think it could have been a little bit more developed.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And it's set up really. It's a really satisfying payoff to that whole mystery of who's framing her, well, who is going after her personally. And he's like, no, I did you a solid. I killed the guy who was messing with you. I just also ruined your life, so you'd have to be with me.
I also
it's like I
hired
did you a favor.
him to for this whole plan.
And to be fair, that was after the incident with Montoya. They already did have that shared history. And Two-Face does already think that guy is a scumbag and is always planning to kill him.
Yeah.
But
this also has one of my favorite Batman moments. It has the traditional like, oh, what, you captured him so that he can escape in like 2 years and do it again.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're fighting for the gun. Either he would have killed you or you would have killed him. Neither option was acceptable. You're welcome. And then he just leaves, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Another scene that was great though is when Montoya is first framed and arrested. Bruce Wayne kind of messes up Two-Face's plan and posts bail for her, which is going to be an insane amount of money. But I like those moments when Bruce Wayne steps in and kind of risks his identity because everyone.
But Robert,
why does Bruce Wayne care about this?
But Robert, he doesn't. All he does is dress up as a bat and beat up crazy people. He doesn't actually do anything to better people's lives.
How it's so refreshing that this isn't just a anti-Batman book. Like, no, the cops are the real heroes, and Batman's getting in their way. No, this stuff's all great.
No, and I'm sure it must have been refreshing because this was running because Hush runs with this, and then after Hush we get into like the crazy Batman era because like War Games, I think that's the story where Stephanie Brown is killed.
Okay.
But it's actually a ploy, and like it's
it's a mess.
We'll do it sometime.
And again, it's just nice to see the cops fleshed out so much because before this, it's like they're either always usually with a couple exceptions like Montoya or Bullock, it's like they're either corrupt or incredibly incompetent. And for those two reasons, you need Batman, and this does a good job exploring the gray area, making that all just complex. It's like, no, Gotham needs the cops and it needs Batman.
Well, and it shows why even like people like Dent, you need Batman for. But yeah, we touched on the ending is heartbreaking. Um, I feel bad for her because I've had like some family and friends that have been in that situation, but I have not. Do you guys have anything else we need to cover before final thoughts?
Well, I mentioned before I like some of the side characters, like her partner, Crispus Allen. He's he was one of my favorite characters. I liked his personality, how he was just like done with everybody in the GCPD. He wasn't taking any shit.
He's someone I hope we get introduced in Cape Crusader season 2, like
Oh
episode
yeah.
1. Like I hope they bring him in.
And he was
Or
apparently a
DC.
character that I've seen before because he shows up in the first season of Gotham. I forgot
He
about
does.
that until I did research for this.
Yeah, him and Montoya are both in Gotham, and then after season 1,
Yeah.
they're like, we're done pretending this is a cop show. We'll just phase them out and stop
Yeah.
using them.
Because I think the last you see of Montoya is when she's having like the affair with Barbara, and then she just disappears. She's
Yeah,
gone.
that's great Montoya representation.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good job,
Great.
Gotham. But yeah, my overall thoughts. Oh, sorry.
And I don't think Christmas Allen is introduced here. I think he's brought in the comics like just a year or two before this, but this is where he gets really popular. And
Okay.
he's not, but apparently someone is credited as him in Dark Knight Rises. I don't know who, or they cut his scene.
Oh.
But apparently he's in that movie somewhere. But he's also in the Gotham Knight animated movie where he's partners with Ramirez again, where Ramirez is kind of a stand-in for Montoya. But at the time, that was supposed to be canon. I don't think no one cared. I don't think he considers it canon. But that was my introduction to Crispus Allen, was that
Okay.
Gotham Knight anime movie.
So Crispus Allen is one of the random cops in the crowd, it looks like at the end.
Okay.
When they're all like charging.
They could have just cut a scene, that like more overtly said his name, or showed it more prominently.
Yeah, and I had even forgotten about the Gotham Knight, that segment in Gotham Knight. I've seen that movie before, but only once.
Oh, okay.
So
now, did it throw you guys off? I think it only happens in the first issue, but the first time someone calls him Chris, that they have an H in there, and then every time after that it's CRIS.
Oh.
Which is more in line with his full name, which is Crispus.
I didn't notice that.
I noticed that immediately.
I did not notice that.
I was like, oh, this isn't consistent.
They hadn't figured out a way how to spell his name yet. They hadn't.
But
Crispus, CH.
Well, he first appeared in Detective Comics and was created by Greg Rucka, so he was a Rucka character who just moved in
carried over.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, I think we can probably get into final thoughts.
My final thoughts are: this is a wonderful book that, if you are a fan of Batman or just police stories like procedurals, that you should read. The art is wonderful. I can't wait to read what's next, even if it's going to be a while. I would recommend this book. Robert?
Oh yeah, big recommendation. If you like the police procedural formula, but even if you don't, if you're just a Batman fan, like, it's still worth giving a shot because you still get Batman stuff in here. You still get a good mix of classic Batman villains. It's just from a different perspective, and it's really good.
Yeah. Kind of echoing what you guys just said. It's great. I loved it. And it's interesting because I typically don't care for a lot of police procedurals, at least in like television and stuff like that. I like this a lot more because it's more character driven than the stuff I've seen of that. And I just like noir, like crime fiction in general. So that really seeing more of that in the Batman setting. As much as I love Batman, seeing that from the perspective of people that aren't superheroes, that are just regular people, I really dug that. So yeah, I really loved this book. I would absolutely recommend it. if you like Batman at all. Even if you don't, even if you're more of a crime fiction person, give it a shot.
And one last thing on just adaptation, whether it's in the Matt Reeves, the Batman universe, or in the James Gunn DCU, this is something we'd all like to see adapted. This would make for a really good show,
Yes.
as long as Batman and Batman villains are allowed to show up. Batman specifically, he needs to be allowed to show up and be involved, because as good as the Penguin pilot was, and if Batman doesn't show up in that show, that's fine. It just depends on if the story needs him. We are also kind of sick of Batman shows without Batman, because we've made a lot of those. And you should only do this if he is allowed to appear. That's a big part of the appeal. It's still just classic Batman Detective Comics, just where he's not the main character.
He doesn't need to be a main character or anything. Just use him how he's used in this, where he will inevitably appear in this universe.
Yeah. But anyway, Robert, Noah, as always, it's been a pleasure. Let's see you guys on the next one.
See ya.